Thank you for downloading this RealAgriculture podcast. Excite your crops with inputs from Excite Bio. Access nitrogen and phosphorus with Excite Bio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Learn more at excitebio.ca. That's XITEBIO.ca.
I'm Sean Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now.
Hello and welcome to this November 16th edition of RealAg on the Weekend here on CJME 980 Regina and CKOM 650 Saskatoon. Yes, you're not hearing things. Sean Haney is away today, and so I am Lyndsey Smith. I am your occasional host for the show, and I'm absolutely pleased to be joining you today. All right, we are mid-November. There is so much happening. As a quick note, we've got some key news stories to tackle this week. Certainly, if you've been following along with all the strikes happening in Canada, we started out the week, of course, with port shutdowns at both the Port of Vancouver and the Port of Montreal. Things really escalated on Monday with specifically the Port of Montreal with a lockout and a strike, and the government did step in on Tuesday and said enough is enough, and our Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon did force the groups to binding arbitration. Now that means that the collective agreements in place for the dock workers in the Port of Montreal, as well as the foremen in the ports of BC, including the Port of Vancouver, did have to return to work this week under the existing collective agreement that's in place. Both of those groups of workers have been without an agreement for some time, some over a year already. But it begs the question, if the government is just going to force unions back to work, do we really have collective bargaining that's healthy? And then the flip side is, of course, one of the key reasons that Minister McKinnon said that these groups need to go back to binding arbitration is that these workers should not be holding the Canadian economy hostage. Does that sound a little familiar? Well, that's because, frankly, as farmers, completely reliant on the rail system and certainly incredibly reliant on a functioning port, when the railways go on strike, as they do, and when port workers go on strike, the entire grain handling system grinds to a halt and is essentially held hostage. This Port of Montreal strike and, of course, the Port of Vancouver strike certainly had a much bigger impact and will continue to have a much bigger impact on average Canadians. So apparently that's what it takes to get the government moving. Now, the unions have said that they are taking the government to court over the binding arbitration. And this is in relation to the railway strike that, of course, forced the Teamsters Union back to work. That court case or that entire litigation is likely going to take years to work through the system. But just because we've had the government step in doesn't necessarily mean this is a done deal. So we'll definitely be keeping tabs on that going forward. We also learned on Friday that Canada Post workers are going on strike just ahead of the busy holiday season, of course. So if you're expecting a holiday card from me, I apologize. That's why you don't receive it. It's not that I don't send them. Actually, it is because I don't send them. I'm terrible at it. I'm sorry. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to talk markets with Brian Voth. We've got a product spotlight from Genesis Fertilizers, and we're going to talk about some exciting new innovations from Bourgault Industries. That's all coming up here on RealAg on the Weekend on 980 CJME Regina and 650 CKOM Saskatoon.
Invest in your farm's future by donating to the Acres for Education campaign. Your charitable donation will get students out of the classroom, giving them real-life experiences that will shape their views on agriculture. Learn more at aitc.sk.ca.
If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Since 2010, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has been helping farmers to grow great wheat. Covering everything from markets, the latest research, pest and disease control, all the way down to on-farm trials, the Wheat School has everything your crop needs. Check out our massive video library on YouTube and grow great wheat with the Wheat School, brought to you by Syngenta Canada, C&M Seeds, and Alberta Grains. Hey RealAg listeners, Cantera Seeds has 8 bags of their new CS 4100 LL Liberty Link canola available to be won by one lucky listener. Visit Cantera.com/RealAg, find out more, and to enter.
Welcome back to Real Ag on the Weekend here on 980 CJME Regina and 650 CKOM Saskatoon. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith. I am, of course, with RealAgriculture.com. We're so glad that you've joined us today. And of course, if you like what you hear, we've got so much more content over at RealAgriculture.com. We've got a YouTube channel. You can follow us on social media. Check us out on X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Real Agriculture. That's what you're looking for. All right. Well, everybody's got to make some big decisions over the winter months on marketing their crops. And for this week's market outlook, we've got Brian Voth with IntelliFarm. He's in conversation with Sean Haney to look at the grain markets and see if we can get past sideways movement.
Okay, last week we talked a little bit about our Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index and the results, and we have a market component of that index. And one of the most volatile components of the index is always which direction is the market headed. Now, it happened in mid-October when we did the study that farmers were feeling a little bit more bullish. It was, I think, a 121 out of 200. So what did you make of that? Because I know you watched that video and read some of that report.
Yeah, I found it kind of interesting because immediately when I saw some of those numbers as it pertains to the marketing side, that it immediately reminded me of that old saying that everything is always the most bullish at the top and bearish at the bottom. And, you know, with marketing and commodity prices being such a big concern. And then also the second part of that was looking at the forward looking part, like not a whole lot of optimism when it came to commodity prices going forward. And it immediately reminded me of this, is that are we at this stage now where everybody's most bearish at the bottom? And, you know, you and I have talked for the last number of years, and you've known how negative I've been for the last probably about 2.5 years now. Bearish Brian has left the building.
Oh, breaking news, everybody. Whoa. Okay, now I'm fascinated.
You might have to retire the grizzly bear label now, I guess. I don't know. But
Brian Voth, the great market bear. Have you totally, okay, so not being like a growly bear is one thing. Are you like, have you changed, are you like a calf, like you're neutral, or are you turning into that bull?
No, it's more, I suspect, and we can talk about this more, but I think we are setting ourselves up into a sideways market for the next while. And I think we have found our floor price. The one asterisk I put on that one is soybeans. But I'm cautiously optimistic is how I've been telling clients that we have actually found our new long-term low or our new long-term floor price.
Okay. So when you look at December corn at a 428, roughly, with all of the bad news that's been circulating and, you know, the talk, I had people on here talking about a low 3 handle on corn. Might have been you.
I'm curious what those same people were saying 18 months ago.
Well, the fact that we're still at 420, around 4.25, is I keep on looking at it as, boy, we've held pretty well considering how much, bad news has been circulating that market.
I agree. And again, I'm going back to, I'm pretty sure it was last spring or early 2023 when corn was still at a 5 something handle on it. And I said my downside objective on corn was $3.90 a bushel. And it looked absolutely ridiculous to say that. And actually, even that didn't hold. Like I think on the nearby chart, we hit like 363, something like that.
Right.
And then we bounced up from there. But 390 was the old highs from 2014 to 2020, like give or take. I mean, there's a few highs, or there were a few higher highs in there, but for the most part, 390 was a tough resistance level. And going on this old idea that old highs become new lows, that's what I was basing on that, along with the fact there's some technical signals showing signs down to those levels. So when we hit 390, on the one hand, I felt vindicated. On the other hand, it kind of sucks because I knew what it meant to be right at the same time. So I'm cautiously optimistic that this 390, I mean, like I said, we did drop a little bit lower than that, but 390-ish on the bottom end will hold on corn. But don't get me wrong, not being bearish is not the same as being bullish.
No, I get that. And I love chatting with you, Brian, because you just lay it on the table. Like you're an open book and you're comfortable enough in your own skin. Here's what I believe at this time, and you say it. And once in a while, there's analysts that, don't really want to say how they feel, right? So I'm curious, if you, knowing today, like if you were to go back in time and think about it 12 months ago or some period in the past, and you think to old Brian, what would current Brian say to past Brian in terms of what you might have missed at that time during your analysis, or what changed?
In reality, we should have been more aggressive on sales, but the problem was the opportunities to sell at those higher levels were also still during the growing season. And so you've got to manage the price risk with the production risk. Unless if you're going down the futures and options road, and that's fine, you can do that too. But without that, if you're just talking about cash marketing, you can only realistically go so far and take on that much production risk by selling grain. Since basically spring of 2022, everything should have been sold for the foreseeable future in the spring of 2022. Really.
Yeah.
But again, is that realistic? No, it's not. So there's this theoretical world that you can live in and say, well, this is theoretically what you should do and everything like that. But we live in a realistic world where that's not necessarily feasible.
What's your thoughts on farmers saying, the other metric we have is confidence in your marketing plan. So your ability, no matter if you think the market's going up or it's going down, what's your confidence level in your ability to manage your risk or, make the sales or not at the time? We're about a 91. We're a little bit up from July, which was, I think, about an 83. We've kind of been sort of sideways trading here as we've seen the outlook on the markets really bounce all over the place. Confidence is somewhat stable, although slightly negative. I always say, like, I am sympathetic to farmers at this time with, how much uncertainty there is out there, but I don't think a 91 is that bad. What are your thoughts?
No, I don't either, because I mean, there's being confident, and then there's being overly confident and having no clue what you're actually doing, I guess. And
right.
Then knowing what you're doing but not being confident about it. So I think to be in between there somewhere is maybe not the worst thing. But also just, I guess, leaving room for that. What if I'm wrong about my thoughts on things?
Right.
And again, in a realistic world, that's why we incremental sell, because things can and always do change. And right now, I feel like we're more in a political environment, or getting into one potentially. And that becomes very challenging because fundamentals can take a back seat at that point.
Well, I'll give one to you. I'll give a scenario to you. We get to March and hits Bloomberg and hits Reuters and all the news services that there's a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. That would be a negative from a market perspective, or how does the market read? Like that's an example of a news piece that could happen, or it could be, there is zero chance this is ending, which is kind of the status quo. But, there could be some sort of a big flip like that where, okay, big news hits the market and the market's got to chew on it and deal with it. But that's one example, right?
Yeah. And like that one, given how long this has gone on, there would likely be some knee-jerk headline reaction to that. And it would be one thing if, wheat prices, corn prices were still up at multi-year highs. Then the risk would absolutely be weighted to the downside. At this point, given that everybody's kind of figured out how to move on and whatnot, and the world hasn't stopped turning, Russia's still growing wheat and shipping it out, and regardless of whatever sanctions and restrictions there are. Ukrainian farmers are still growing crops. Yes, it's not as much as it used to be, and it'll take a long time to, demine fields and get all that stuff back into production. Long term, yeah, it should be a negative thing. But again, the market has moved on, and where the prices right now say that this is not an issue.
So what's a geopolitical factor that moves the market?
A tariff war between China and the U.S. would be one.
That seems likely, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, they're politicians, so I take everything with a lot of salt. But
fair enough.
It's the most realistic one, and I say that's why I said right at the beginning, I'm putting an asterisk beside whether soybeans have found their floor price or not, because they're the ones that the soybean prices are the ones that are most susceptible to a downside correction, especially when you look at the fact that the balance sheet is like more than adequate. Yes, it's a little tighter after the report on Friday than what it was, but when you look historically, the ending stocks numbers in the U.S., which, by the way, are accounting for, I think it was like a 6% increase in soybean exports year over year already, the balance sheet is well padded. And so if a tariff war were to start, China could very quickly do this to the U.S. again, just like we saw in 2018.
Yeah. Tariffs on Canadian canola. Well, this is a week where Minister McCauley is supposedly in China. Are you expecting tariffs on Canadian canola going into China?
Am I expecting tariffs? I don't. This one is really weird to me because, people have been talking about this for months, and yet there is nothing official out there at all, aside from China launching this inquiry. And I look at this and I say, on the one hand, the canola balance sheet is tightening up. There's no way that Stats Canada isn't going to lower production numbers in 3 weeks when they come out with that. So that's a bullish factor compared to what we see today. Whether or not China buys it or not, or does put tariffs on or anything like that, I'll say this. If China puts tariffs onto Canadian canola, they weren't going to buy it in the first place. Because if they do it, they don't need the product.
Right.
And in 2018, with the tariff war between U.S. and China, it was the exact same scenario. That was the same time that they were culling hog herds with ASF and everything. So their demand for soybeans and soybean products was plummeting. They were in the perfect position to go toe-to-toe with Trump on tariffs because they didn't need to buy the product.
Yeah. The other commodity that's very susceptible to a U.S.-China trade war is, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on the cotton market, but it is cotton is definitely one of the commodities that I've learned over the course of this year talking to different analysts that focus on cotton is heavily exposed because of how much cotton is the U.S. cotton market is reliant on the Chinese market. So, hey, Brian, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate it. Love every time you come on. It is so awesome to hear as we get a little bit closer to winter. This is typically when bears go into hibernation. So it's nice that you have done that with your own soul and you have moved over to a little bit of a kind of a neutral, you're sideways trade kind of a guy. I like this. I like sideways trade Brian better than bearish Brian.
Well, sideways after the last 2.5 years might look bullish. I don't know, but yeah, well, it's all perspective, right?
Indeed. I don't know that there are many easy answers in this grain market. All right. Big thanks to Brian Voth of IntelliFarm and, of course, Sean Haney for that report. We're going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with more of RealAg on the weekend here on 980 CJME Regina and 650 CKOM Saskatoon right after this.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lyndsey Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcasts. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Blackhawk EVO from IntelliFarm is the next evolution in pre-seed burn-down herbicide. Powered by Duplasan, Blackhawk EVO delivers fast, flexible, and complete control of early germinating and winter annual broadleaf weeds. Find out more at newfarm.ca.
Welcome back to Real Ag on the Weekend here on 980 CJME Regina and 650 CKOM Saskatoon. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith, and the following is a paid product spotlight by Genesis Fertilizers. I'm Lyndsey Smith with RealAgriculture.com, and joining me now is Terry Drabiuk with Genesis Fertilizers. Terry, welcome here. Tell us about what you do with Genesis Fertilizers.
Well, sure. I have I wear many hats. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Genesis Fertilizers, and I'm an Access Capital representative, so I'm licensed and registered to sell securities in every province across Canada. And I go out and talk to farmers to get them to invest in the project.
All right. Okay. So we are going to talk, of course, fertilizer cost today, fertilizer access. These are all important parts that the design of Genesis Fertilizers really hopes to address. So let's talk about the influence of NOLA as a pricing benchmark when it comes to fertilizer costs. And in what ways does Genesis Fertilizers aim to provide more stability for Canadian farmers with these price fluctuations?
Yeah, sure, Lyndsey. So NOLA is New Orleans, Louisiana, as I suspect most of your listeners would know that. And that's the benchmark for bringing fertilizer into North America. And it's all about price discovery of a commodity. So they use NOLA as the price discovery, and the further away you get from NOLA, the higher you pay for your fertilizer. So Western Canadian farmers pay the highest price for fertilizer on the continent, and in most cases, the world. Another key attribute of that is the price discovery of natural gas. So because natural gas is one of the biggest inputs at making nitrogen fertilizer, the price discovery mechanism in Western Canada is a company called AECO in Calgary, Alberta. Because of the glut of gas that runs off the foothills of Alberta throughout the prairies and the envious pipeline structure we have in Western Canada, everybody in Western Canada prices their gas off of AECO. Eastern Canada and the United States price their gas off of Henry Hub, which is priced off the NYMEX in New York, and Henry Hub is in Louisiana with the same thing as AECO, where they've got, a pipeline infrastructure that reaches most of the United States. The key, though, Lyndsey, is that the NYMEX or Henry Hub, they sell their natural gas in British thermal units in US dollars. And AECO sells their natural gas in gigajoules in Canadian dollars. And so every single day, AECO's got a price advantage over Henry Hub, which means that the producers, and I mean the fertilizer producers, they sell at the highest price and they manufacture at the lowest cost. And that's the key about NOLA.
Okay, that is fascinating stuff and also really important to understand because, of course, we have to think about the logistics side, which is where we get to in our next question. So thinking about, obviously, where things are priced from, but also where things potentially travel from, that logistics question weighs in. How does Genesis Fertilizers' proposed model address the logistical challenges that Canadian farmers face, especially during those critical seasons?
Sure. There is very little product that comes from NOLA that hits Canada, mainly Ontario and Manitoba. But if it does, it comes from the river, Mississippi, up to, say, St. Louis, into a transfer terminal, into a rail car, from the rail car into a distribution house in Canada, and then distributed to retails. So lots of touch points and lots of costs. Genesis Fertilizers plans on building one plant, and that one plant is for Western Canadian farmers. So not only would the investors be entitled to the fertilizer that we produce, they would also profit from the fertilizer plant.
Okay. Now, in times of high demand, Western Canadian farmers often face price pressure from U.S. buyers because of that competition of NOLA-sourced fertilizers. How does Genesis Fertilizers plan to alleviate that competitive pressure and create more secure supply for Western farmers?
Well, we don't plan on lowering the price. So the model is around the investor farmers paying exactly what they would pay today. So we would be competitive in that high sales, low manufacturing costs. And we plan on giving the profit back to the farmer as close to the cost of production as we possibly can. So they're entitled to the product and they get the profit from the product, and we call it a closed loop system, which is actually really critical. And it's unlike any other model that you can see around the world, because as the owners, they're also the ones who will take the product from the plant.
This is, of course, a project that we've been following closely here with Real Agriculture and on Real Ag Radio, hearing from Genesis Fertilizers. For anyone who's interested, for more information, how they can invest, how Genesis Fertilizers plans to deliver this, where can they go for more information?
The best place is our website. It's genesisfertilizers.com. You can go on there and see the profiles of all the board members and senior management, like myself. And there's direct access, so you can email us or call us. It's just a click away.
This has been a paid product spotlight by Genesis Fertilizers. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with more of Real Ag on the weekend here on 980 CJME Regina and 650 CKOM Saskatoon right after this. I'm Lyndsey Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lyndsey Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by BASF and Syngenta Canada.
Excite your crops with inputs from Excite Bio. Access nitrogen and phosphorus with Excite Bio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Learn more at excitebio.ca. That's XITEBIO.ca.
Welcome back to RealAg on the Weekend here on 980 CGME Regina and 650 CKOM Saskatoon. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. It's time to round out the show with some good old equipment talk. On this segment, we're going to hear from Bourgault Industries, big rollout of new equipment from that company, a familiar one, obviously, for Saskatchewan and Western Canada. But this is a company that has its sights on expanding far and wide. And so for this discussion, we're going to hear from Bern Tobin with RealAgriculture and Colin Rush with Bourgault. Now, this is just a portion of the full interview, the full video. You can head to YouTube or realagriculture.com and see the entire video and the entire discussion as well. So without further ado, let's hop to it. This is Colin and Bern in conversation about Bourgault's latest lineup.
Now, you've just returned from Arizona, where you met with your dealers and showed off some new products. So, tell us about that meeting.
Well, that meeting was a couplefold. It was a celebration of our 50 years in business, which we invited our Bourgault dealer network and personnel to join us. But more importantly, it was kind of a bit of a transformational dealer meeting as well, because we were launching not only new products, and we do that every year, but really some transformational technology, which we'll get into it. So we had never done anything of this scope and magnitude ever. In fact, we had never launched a product truly outside of Saskatchewan. So this was a big deal for us. And we had such amazing attendance. We had over 500 attendees. We had dealer locations from Bourgault dealers representing from all Canada and the U.S. I think it was over close to about 170 locations that represent Bourgault in their sales. And we really talked about this transformational, what we call Bourgault 1.0, which was everything that got us there to the first 50 years, to what we call Bourgault 2.0, which is this transformational thing where we step on the accelerator and we go with new offerings, new technologies, new agronomic flexibility tools for our customers.
Right. So, hey, let's get into it. I had a chance to read a couple of the press releases, and I noticed, several references to capacity without complexity. Tell us about that philosophy and how it's reflected in the Bourgault lineup.
Well, I think it's no secret. If you look at any producer's bottom line, they are looking for that productivity. They have trouble getting labor. They look at distances they have to travel. They look at their field conditions that they have to go there. And let's not beat around the bush. We've had a lot of what I call capacity for a number of years. This isn't our first our products that we've rolled out that are large. But in some cases, and we've had some pushback from our customers, and we've learned and evolved our products, is the simplicity wasn't there. That they were sometimes complex to unfold or get from the transport position into the field position. Some of the things we used in terms of our operator interfaces and controls, they were hard to learn, and they had all kinds of capacity and they had all kinds of different features and benefits, but they weren't what I would call intuitively simple. So this was really a theme of what we talked, this capacity without the complexity of maybe things we've done in the past, just simple, and also taking that as well to the technology side is how can you get the most productivity, easy to learn new operators, maybe somewhat untrained, field help that joins the farms in the spring and the fall. And this is what we drove that message through.
Yeah. Hey, let's dig into some of these new products. Let's start with the new 7-plex folding 3545 Paralink hoe drill. It comes in 80 to 100-foot configurations. I guess the story starts here with productivity, right?
It really is. So, this wasn't the first 100-foot drill that we have out here, but what we have learned, even the evolution of products, this is not a compromise. This is a true Bourgault product. This is the same thing. If you want to put that 350 pounds of product down the mid-row, whether it's urea, and then another 150 pounds of product and starter fertilizer with your seed, that machine is going to be able to do it without any compromises. So what are we looking at? Well, we've had a wingback design fold, and it was a complex wizard to go through. But this machine just basically folds like a traditional machine. You either push or pull that lever to either fold or unfold that process in the field and just wait for it to finish. That is as simple as it gets to move that. Now, is that a new thing? No, there's large machines out there. But to do it, what I call in a cube of steel, our engineering team absolutely outdid themselves here. When you see a picture or a video of this thing folding and unfolding, you're like, how is that even possible? Knowing that there has to be hoses run and air kits. And that's not what we did. This is a large machine. We put ridiculous amounts of flotation on here under a new high float axle. We lengthened the frame in order to give it more trash flow, so you aren't stopping and having to basically raise your openers, basically circle around and then go back into the same row. Everything we've done is to maximize that productivity. Some of the producers running this unit here with our prototypes were just amazed. They were up to 56 acres per hour, and that was including their fills. So that was stopping to fill. That was their average. 56 acres per hour is what they average with their fills. If you take their fills out of it, they're well north of 60 acres per hour in productivity on the large 100-foot. But again, that capacity without the complexity was key. We've added a ton of features here. And there's one more, and it's kind of a neat one when people learn about it, is who's going to buy a used 100-foot? It's obviously the guys, the large producers that want a new 100-foot, but is there always a market for those large machines? Well, our engineering team made this thing simple. Whether you do it at the farm or at the dealership when they take it on trade, they can knock off the 10-foot outer sections and make this a 5-plex 80-foot machine on the 100. And on the 84-foot 7-plex, they can knock those off and make it a 66-foot 5-plex. So again, we're giving maximum configurability for those producers and for the dealers that have to do business with Bourgault.
Hey, let's talk about the wing tank, an option you'll be offering with the 2026 9000 series air carts. What do we have here? More capacity, right?
More capacity. It's this one's a little trickier than just even the drill side, because usually what people say is, well, if you add more product, you're going to add more weight, more compaction. And that's a huge concern. We're already kind of maximum rubber under our 9000 I-Series carts. However, what is neat about the wing tank is we've had a saddle tank forever. That is now at 44 bushels. It often comes with a bulk boom to basically lift those mini bulk bags off of a flat deck and basically dump them in, and as well as a pallet storage area. But the very neat thing is this now is at the same level on that side tank. We call it a wing tank now, that can be loaded with the conveyor. We take all that bulk boom off the pallet storage, and now there's actually 66 bushels of usable capacity. And that's usable capacity, even with that Class D canola. We're actually closer to, I think, 70 or 72 bushels of actual. But now, would you believe it? There's more capacity. Lots of guys are using even a tandem truck to end dump canola in now. And if they want that option, they're actually getting less weight, believe it or not. So when you put that on, compared to the bulk boom, the saddle tank full, and the storage, it's actually 2,500 pounds lighter.
Hey, let's talk about technology. We're seeing an evolution here. You're becoming a technology company. Tell us about Bourgault Intelligent Control, a wireless seed controller.
Well, no secret there. I mean, there's been competitors out there with wireless-based, tablet-based seed controllers for a while. And we certainly could have, caught up. We could have put those in. It is one thing that our customers have been requesting for a long time, our dealers as well. But what we decided was we were looking at the future. We were looking at saying, well, what is those key drivers? And one thing we looked at was the data integration. We looked at, in mixed fleet operations where people are running one, brand of mainline tractor, whether it's John Deere or C&H or Claas, and they're looking at Bourgault integration. It was not, I would say, easy to get the data back into those data operation centers, whether it's JD Ops or Field Ops with C&H. So what we've actually done now with Bourgault Intelligent Control, at least in this first iteration here, this will be a completely seamless integrated into those the tractor task controllers. What that means is the tablet, which is wireless, which is great, will actually just do the advanced, what I call drill functions. They'll do Dynacal, Packmaster, or Liftmaster, basically, and they'll control the metering. Everything else, the path planning, the machine-to-machine communication, the telematics, the section timings, and even variable rate or manual rates will actually be done by the tractor. So what that does is that gives you complete integration, customers are already used to this with everything from boundaries with their tractors, whether it's with John Deere or C&H, same thing with the sprayers, same with the combines. This now allows us to basically leap ahead to that full integration with mainlines. And again, huge capacity, but more importantly, we designed this entire app around simplicity. There was a quote, I think it's actually in the press release. It says that this is not your grandfather's seed controller, but he could run one. And that's exactly what we saw out of Phoenix last week. Is we had older salesmen, older dealer principals that came, even some customers that said, hey, I could do this. And for that to be on the Bourgault system, let me tell you, that was a quantum leap in terms of us throwing out the book and starting fresh with a white piece of paper on how to make this thing simple.
We are going to leave it there. Again, if you're interested in hearing more, head on over to RealAgriculture.com. Thank you so much for joining me here on RealAg on the weekend, here on 980 CJME Regina and 650 CKOM Saskatoon. Have a great weekend, everybody.